welcome back to the Social Media Derby podcast. We've got a very special episode this week. A good pal of ours and very special guest. You can see from all his clubber who he supports. And he's one of the best rattlers I've ever met. And this is going to be a great episode for me to watch as him and Jonts go at it. But yeah, Dom, what you saying, man? You all right?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for you guys having me. I appreciate that I didn't even need to beg when I said, "Can I come on?" You were just like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I appreciate it and respect you guys for doing this podcast. It's an amazing thing. I know a lot of the time, a lot of us have got big ideas about things we want to do, and very rarely you actually see them through. So big up and respect for making this happen.
Yeah, no, we for context, we plotted and planned out who we would try and invite from our friends groups and different people that we thought would make really good episodes, and you were definitely high up on the list. So we're just waiting for the right kind of time, and I think with everything that's going on, perfect time to bring you in. Do you want to give the audience, I don't know how much of an audience we have, but do you want to give the people that listen a little idea of what you do and what you're into? Obviously, you support United, but what do you got?
Yeah, I could do that. I thought this was gonna be like Drink Champs, where you did rattle out like a whole intro about me and all my amazing achievements in life. But that's cool. I can do it myself, Anthony.
No, we leave it to you. We leave it to the guests because we don't want to.
I got this.
So
I got this. Yeah. Well, look, we've known each other for a good few years now. Really good friends, and so I've come from a background where clearly I'm a Man United fan. I have been since 1991, or maybe even earlier, 1990. And that's an important thing to note, because what that means is I was a United fan 2 years before we won the league for the first time in 26 years. So any accusations of being glory hunter, Jonty, I'm going to just get those out of the way before we even kick off. But outside of my footballing life, I work for an NGO focusing on the climate crisis, trying to stop fossil fuels and protect people who are on the front line fighting to defend our planet. So yeah, a bit of a political background as well.
So we've got a very high value moral Don joining us on this call and on this podcast, to talk about the stuff that's been going on, because we've talked about it a little bit separately around obviously Saudi. You've got the Qatar takeover, which we haven't really touched on, but we'll get into the nitty gritty in that in a little bit later. But first, let's chat a little bit about the season, man, because we've talked about it a lot off camera at different functions whenever we've bumped into each other and seen each other. What do you think, first of all, with United season? How do you think we've done? Because there are a lot of, I think there's very strong takes on both sides. You've got United fans who I think generally have been really happy about the season for the most part. And you've got rival fans kind of bantering us about kind of Carabao Cups not being a big trophy and, our season's better than yours. But let's start with United. What do you think of our season? Good?
Yeah.
Bad?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to call it great. And I wouldn't go as far as calling it great when you've got the levels that you expect Manchester United to be at year after year. Like, we're obviously not reached that stage yet. I think it was a par season, if I'm perfectly honest. I feel like we, winning the Carabao Cup was important. Getting to the FA Cup final was good. Obviously, a bit of a run in Europa as well. And more importantly than anything else, we had to finish in top four. That was the absolute bare minimum that we needed for the season. And I think what Ten Hag's obviously come in and done is he's solidified the team. He's got us playing within a style again, which I don't think we've seen for a long time. So he sorted out the Ronaldo issue. I mean, that had to happen, and he dealt with that swiftly and very, very quickly and well, in my opinion. So I feel like it was a good enough season, also littered within it absolute horror moments. Some of which I'm not going to mention, but at this point in the pre-season, kind of play on your mind. You think, well, all right, there's a lot of positives here, but is there still a bit of a weak spine to the side that perhaps crumbles under pressure at certain points? How can we improve that over the summer and with another year of Ten Hag? So look, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination one of those United fans who's going to start gassing that we had the best season in the world, but it's clearly the best one we've had in some years, and I think there is a positive trajectory for us to build on for next season.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think it's hard to find a United fan that's going to be level-headed about the season. I think there's either two extremes of we've done amazing, Ten Hag's the Oracle, and we're heading for Champions League and Premier League success in the near future. Or you've got people who are dwelling on the couple of batterings we took, and and kind of things tailing off a bit. Johns, what's your take on Dom's assessment of the season? And hey, what's up, bro? I didn't intro you. How you doing?
Don't worry. No, I mean, first of all, thank you, Dom, for coming on. Obviously, I don't want to see a lot of Man United fans on this podcast, but I've got to put up with a couple of them.
There's a lot of us.
If I've got to put up with them, you're the best one to put up with. So that's fine.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I agree with you. I think definitely, like, if you look at the history of your club, then this shouldn't be a season that you're super proud of. But if you were to zoom in maybe on just the last few years and how you've been performing across those last few years, then there's a lot of positives to take, right? I think new manager doesn't always work out right that first season, right? It usually takes a couple of seasons for managers to get into it, even though these days managers get sacked before they ever get into a club.
And it started
really
shaky.
Anyway. It started shaky, of course.
Horrible.
I mean, what we're seeing now in the transfer window is it doesn't look like he's getting very much back in regardless, which is
this guy. This is yesterday's topic that he's bringing into today's topic around.
Not even like that. Like, in his defense, I'm trying to say this in his defense, and probably maybe an indictment of the Glazers is that he turned it around for you guys. You looked a lot more positive last season than you have for a long time, despite a couple of batterings, right? And I think if that doesn't tell them the owners to start investing more into your team, then I don't know what will. So I think I agree with your assessment that Man United is a massive club, right? They're arguably the biggest club in the world. You can't be happy with third on a trophy. But if you do look at the last 5-10 years, it's better than you've been getting. So I think it depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah, it's the combination though, isn't it, Johns? Because this is the thing, right?
Yeah.
I've had this chat with loads of people, United fans and other fans as well. We've had seasons where we finished second, like post Fergie.
Yeah.
We've had that, right? Not
Yeah.
title race, nip and tuck type seasons, but we finished second. And we've had seasons where we've won trophies, not big trophies again, but we've won Europa Leagues, Carabao Cups, FA Cups, stuff like that. But this is the first season where we've done both in the top four and won a cup, which I think that's the part that makes me, if I'm going to assess the season, lean slightly more positively than, look at, we've done this before XYZ, because that's always been the clapback from opposition fans is Jose got you second, Ollie got you second, blah, 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 blah. But during that time, they very much focused on the league and weren't able to get a trophy as well, which we needed. And I think that's why I think this season's a really good platform, but we need to do better.
I think the other big difference right now is it feels like we're building something for the first time in a long time. And I've not felt that under Ollie. Maybe certain pockets of Ollie moments where you thought, okay, he's bringing in young players and stuff. But we got behind Ollie at the wheel. But look, in hindsight, it's very easy to look back now and say, actually, he clearly wasn't the guy. And he didn't have an overall cohesive plan for what he wanted to do. Jose is never going to be your long-term building manager. That's not what he's about.
A mercenary.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what he's always been. And it worked for him in most of his career except for Spurs, which is laughable. But I think, it feels like there's a bit of a building blocks now to kind of go on and do something United, which I don't think I've felt actually for quite a long time. Even when we were bringing young players through, it looks like Ten Hag knows the profile of play he wants. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the signing that was announced this week, Mason Mount. It feels like it fits into that mould. Looking at a new goalkeeper, that also looks like that fits into that mould. So I think for me, that is the big positive take of where we can go. You know what football's like. It's always on a knife's edge, right? It can all come tumbling down very, very quickly, as Jonty will know.
Come on now. It's early. So we're only 9 minutes in. You're already getting at me. Come on.
That's longer than I expected to take.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has been a slow rattling start, but we're going to move to the rattle now. So I think that's a good assessment of United. I don't know how much more you can poke the holes into kind of our season.
I was going to ask one question though, which is, don't you feel now more than ever you have a manager that can go toe to toe with the best? As an impartial fan in this case, I'd say that I feel like, at least if I was a Man United fan, I would be a lot more confident around Ten Hag and his ability to compete tactically, and in terms of style of play as well, with the big dogs in the league right now, right? Pep Guardiola, Klopp, maybe Arteta. And that's something I still don't feel super confident about when I think of Arteta. Is it, can he go toe-to-toe with the best managers in the world, not just in the Premier League, but elsewhere too? And so that was one thing I wanted to ask both of you was, do you get a different feeling with Ten Hag? Are you more secure? Do you feel more confident with him as your manager?
Yeah, look, yes. I think ultimately the answer to that question is yes. It does feel like we've finally got a manager who can take us on a trajectory that can be world class, or can, as you say, go toe to toe with the top managers. I think the thing you have to remember is how quickly that can all change. We were talking a year ago about Klopp being one of the greatest managers in the world, if not the greatest manager in the world, being able to go toe to toe with Pep. That's what the story was. That's what the narrative was. A year down the line, and he's losing 7-8 games in a row as a Liverpool manager. There's question marks about whether he'll even see it to the end of the season, right? So it is, in football, these things can change so quickly, and I do think everything does hang on a knife's edge. But when you look at what United have had in the post-Ferguson era, definitely this feels like something now that is much more tangible. You think about the kind of the different profile of managers that United have gone through. Straight after Fergie, it was a like-for-like replacement. Like, how can you get the closest thing to Alex Ferguson? You get another Scottish angry manager who's going to shout at players. That was David Moyes. Didn't last until the end of the season. Moved on to the profile of legendary European manager who's won multiple titles all around Europe, Louis van Gaal. Guy turned out to be completely insane, didn't quite work for us either. And then moved on to the Jose Mourinho style of manager, who is just Jose. I mean, he has his own profile right at the end of the day, but someone who's considered to be a legend in the game. And then that didn't work. And then you go to a club legend like Ollie, and that may have worked for a very short period of time, but overall didn't work. So it really feels like United have gone through all the different options of different profiles of managers post-Ferguson to see what will fit. None of them has really worked. Ten Hag is more of that kind of European up-and-coming type manager who's got the footballing brain, who's got extensive knowledge, who's going to live and breathe United. And it is different, perhaps, to what we've had before. It's different to what Ferguson was, but you need a different manager in this day and age. You can't. I don't think. I mean, this is a whole other debate. I don't think Ferguson would be as successful in the modern day football as perhaps he was back then, just because of the attitudes of footballers and how he would have been. It would have been much harder for him to control them in the way that he did. But yeah, overall, it does feel like what we've got now is someone who can get to that level. And I mean, if nothing else, he's got the same haircut as Pep. So
exactly, man. I would say though, I think this category of manager, the Ten Hag style of manager, was the last and only profile of manager we didn't try. So, which is a bit of a project up and coming manager who's going to be able to come in and bring new ideas in, like you said, and probably not have that element of fear that some of the other managers may have had going against some of the big managers. Because to be honest, the people you just reeled off, I mean, Moyes probably should have never touched grass at OT, and I think that was just a big regret generally. But I can understand the profile match or how they kind of got to
it made sense at the time. It felt like it.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think he was our number one choice. Let's be real. There were all the rumours around that, Fergie was trying to tap up Pep, Ancelotti, Mourinho, all these different managers at the time to try and take over, and he wasn't able to. So I think that was a circumstance situation. And then if you look at the rest of them, they were kind of over the hill. It was kind of like a bit of an aura appointment. Like we hired Louis van Gaal when I think we were aiming for Klopp at that time, and he turned us down because Woodward was selling us as the Disneyland for football, whatever he said. So you turn to Van Gaal, and then Jose was directly because Pep was coming in, and I think their asses fell out, and they said this is the best thing we can do. And I think Ollie was just circumstance again. He was at the wheel. We were all saying sign a ting, go crazy on him because he had some great performances. And it just was something that we just should never have done. We should have just kept him as interim and then gone for whoever we wanted to go for. This Ten Hag appointment, or I think it was Pochettino they were looking at the time, and done that. And I think it's just happened now at the right time. And I think we've ended up getting the right person, or the best person available to come in, and who's, like Johnson said, has elements of those other top managers in him in terms of his temperament and in terms of his like stubbornness. But like you said, it's hard to judge because he's had good results against them, but he's also got slapped silly against them. And next season it could tilt either way, and every season it can change either way. Because we were having a conversation with Liverpool fans yesterday, and they were talking about how Salah has us on strings and he's slapped us up and blah 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 blah. And I've said, sure, fair enough. In the last probably 3 seasons, he's had goal scoring contributions against us. But I remember the days when people were saying he was rubbish against United and he couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo. So it changes because every season, the beauty of it is you've got to play everyone. So you're always going to have a chance to change the narrative and improve or worsen. So I think the Arteta one is...
The narrative point is important, though. So I can look back at your managers of old, right? And obviously it's only been a year with Ten Hag, so I can't fully judge, or less than a year even. But there's something about how he handles the media and how he handles the fans to keep everyone kind of on side. If I look back, I don't know if any of the other managers you've had, and I don't want to bring this up, and it's not a diss, could handle getting battered 7-0 by one of your closest rivals and come out of the season relatively unscathed in terms of the attitudes
right. I agree
towards
with
him. Do you know what I mean? So the way that he deals with media, the way that he deals with fans, the way that he's dealt with like Rashford when he's late, all of this kind of stuff.
The way he dealt with Ronaldo.
Yeah, exactly.
The way he dealt with Ronaldo is the best.
To come out of all of these things unscathed, Man United at that time was like a minefield. You could step on a mine at any time that could completely end you in the fans' eyes, pundits' eyes, whoever's eyes. So
look how Jose dealt with Pogba.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone else got to this point where they kind of lost their heads a little bit. I mean, Jose's an easy one. He does that all the time. But like even Van Gaal, Moyes, they all look tired. Yeah. Like Ollie looked like he had been through the ringer. Like
what Moyes went through in 9 months literally looked like 20 years. Honestly,
exactly,
it's actually quite sad to see. Poor guy. But no, look, I 100% agree, and I'm glad that you, as an Arsenal fan, feel the fear with Man United somewhat again. Like that's a nice feeling. I think that's what we want. There's a long way to go. Like there's a long way to go for Man United still. I think we've got the right manager. Let's see what happens next season. Let's see what happens this summer in terms of signings. My big concern is, at what point does he say enough is enough? Like, at what point does he get, use a very good metaphor about minefields. At what point does he get sick and tired of dodging the minefields or, losing limbs to various different mines? Like, at some point he's going to say, this is getting too difficult, or I'm not being backed by the club. I can't make the signings I want to make. I'm not sure if I can keep doing this. I can't lie. I am a little bit scared of that happening at some point.
It's kind of like the position that Klopp's in now.
Klopp
looks like he's done.
That comes with the territory with United, though. But this is the thing: the amount of mines he's managed to dodge already. Like the Ronaldo one is like the huge tomahawk mine, or whatever you want to say, like the massive one that he's managed to dodge. I think we just talked about it because it was a breaking news that David De Gea has confirmed that he's left the club, which he's left a really nice, like, beautiful statement talking about his great times at the club. I think we all know that he hasn't been treated very well at the end with all this contract stuff. I think it's been a bit of a shambles, to say the least. Yeah. But again, I think that is something that Ten Hag wants. Yeah, to be honest, a lot of people have said, "Oh, we want to keep him," or he said good things in the press. Remember what he was saying about Ronnie before he left. Oh, he can contribute. We're going to play him. He's a big part of the team. And then man was never touching grass. He was just getting fined and losing his head. So I think this is something that I remember watching some Ajax YouTubers talk about Ten Hag before he kind of came to United, but there were strong rumours. And they said that about him. They said that he'll never diss people in public. He'll say good things about them, but don't let that be an indicator of whether he rates them or not. You'll know by whether he chooses them and he plays them and what he does in the market. Like, he could sell players that you think he likes. And that's what's happened to Ronnie, and that's now what's happened to De Gea. And I'm sure that will happen to...
it's going to happen to Maguire.
Harry Maguire. I'm hoping.
He hasn't spoken badly about Maguire. Like,
exactly.
And Maguire is number one. If you were going to talk crap about anyone, Maguire would
He's
be the
an easy
easiest target that you
Yeah,
could get away with. Yeah.
But I think look, there's something unique about the Man United job, which I don't think any other, maybe Real, maybe Barca, I don't know. Not many other teams really are going to have to. Managers are going to have to experience that kind of the magnifying glass that comes over almost every single move that you make, that multiplies every single tiny minor issue at the club by a million. And Ronaldo is obviously a great example of one of those. The De Gea one we're talking about now, that's another one. There's even things like how does Garnacho respond to Mason Mount taking the number 7 shirt next season, right? There's so many potential flare points at United that can make everything come tumbling down very, very quickly. So as a fan, you're always living on the edge. But imagine as a manager who's having to deal with all of those things. Whilst, let's not forget, the club is in the middle of being taken over, potentially, supposedly, right? So, it is such a difficult job to do. I don't envy anyone who takes on that role. I think we're lucky in a sense that pretty much until now, every manager has wanted to manage United as the kind of successor to Fergie. As that line goes on, as we get 6, 7, 8, 9 managers away from when we had Fergie, does the United job start to almost become too toxic for managers to want to take? I hope not, and we're definitely not there yet. But do we find ourselves in a position like Spurs were in a couple of, was it last summer, I think, when literally no one wanted to manage them, and then definitely had to beg Conte in the end, and it happened. But it's such a hard job to manage a club like Manchester United, and I think you have to say so far, regardless of what's happened on the pitch in terms of how I feel about United's results, Ten Hag's done as good as a job as anyone could have done. And so there's enough to go forward there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think Johns will probably disagree with this, though. But I think he should have been in the shout for at least the conversation more than I heard for manager of the season. I'm not saying he should have won it, definitely not. But I was hearing people dismiss him because of those bad results. And I think if you look at the totality of his job, what he's managed to avoid with all these minefields that we talked about, and then still achieve a top 4 and win a cup and get to a final of another one and get quarter final of another one and somehow get through all of that, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
We're all, let's be honest, all of our clubs are fighting for second in that regard, right? When someone wins a treble, there's no way anyone else is getting manager of the season. And I don't know. I was hearing Arsenal fans saying Arteta. No, yeah, you're hearing Arsenal fans. Those aren't the kind of Arsenal fans that I am. So I'm gonna separate myself from them. But I think, he definitely deserves a shout. Ten Hag deserves a shout. I would say if De Zerbi had been there longer, he would have deserved a shout. Eddie Howe, Arteta, of course. But I think people definitely downplayed what Ten Hag did because of it's just the banter that was around your club for a long time, and he still and again. He's managed to come out of most of that unscathed. But when people are bantering the club, they're not bantering him. They're bantering your team. They're mostly bantering your team, your owners, your players, Maguire, all of this other stuff. When the Ronaldo interview came out, that's just a play on. That's a play on words because it doesn't fit anything other. The one
that I've seen is they took that quote from him about eras coming to an end. And massively take it out of context. What he didn't say was it is the end of the Pep Guardiola era. Of course he didn't say that. That's ridiculous. So all things on social media, these things get taken out of context. So he has come under a little bit of criticism, but by and large, for United fans. And I think most people in football, bald is best. That's definitely the slogan that's coming out strong right now.
Well, I mean, look at Arteta as well. The bloody, what was it, Lucky, the dog that he's just bought, the flipping playing the Anfield thing, playing Anfield music in our training ground. All managers were getting it. Look at Potter. I wouldn't be surprised if Potter never manages again based off of what happened to him at Chelsea. You know what I mean? So I think Ten Hag, of course, is going to get some stick, but I just think he's come out of it relatively well. It seems like water off a duck's back to him. He hasn't come out. It doesn't seem like he's fatigued at all really yet. So
don't forget there's
point, a lot of potential there.
Yeah, a point I want to make. Last thing on Ten Hag before we go to Arsenal is Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher sat down with him in a studio after we lost the first 2 matches of the season, and they were aiming to try and grill the living daylights out of him because he wasn't the kind of the media's choice that they wanted for the United job. Everyone wanted Pochettino. There was the whole Pochettino everyone was fangirling over Pochettino to try and get him in, and they chose Ten Hag, and he started off shaky, to say the least, and they were ready. The knives were out then. So for him to come through at the end, all of that stuff, and do all those things, and like you say, Johns, kind of come out with a little few scrapes on him after being battered 7-0 and 6 threes and all these things, beautiful turtleneck, Oswego's looking stylish, Paul Smith, beautiful. He's done great. And I think someone who is quite stylish but has Lego hair. Let's go to Arteta and Arsenal. Dom, what's your take on Arsenal season? Because
I mean,
we've had chats about who's had a better season and blah 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 blah. But how do you, honestly speaking, what do you think of their season?
Look, I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm not going to like fire shots just for no reason, because like there's no point in doing that here. As much as I would love to, like I would love nothing more to be sitting here and criticising Arsenal and laughing at them. But like, let's be honest, it was a good season for Arsenal. Like there's no question about it. To be challenging for the title. For as long as they was extremely impressive, and no one expected it. And even looking at the squad at the start of the season, you wouldn't necessarily said that was something that was going to happen. So Arteta's clearly done a good job there. Didn't come out of the season with a trophy, as everyone knows. Like I was thinking about this earlier. Look, I don't know how you feel about this, Jonty, but like I almost feel in a way that not winning anything this season, or the last season that's just gone, actually will serve you better for next season for two reasons. One, it will give the squad a hunger and desire to go that one step further, which like shouldn't be lacking at this level of football anyway, and the amount of money they're paid. Like, I always feel like, there's that question of, are they hungry enough? Like, it's crazy to think they couldn't be hungry enough to win the league or to win some major piece of silverware, especially with the money they get. But so there's that point. The second point is, and the thing that I was consoling myself with for a lot of the season when I thought Arsenal were when it looked like Arsenal, really could win the league, was, is this going to be a Leicester 2016 situation where some of those top players are suddenly going to start disappearing from the club? Will Saliba go? Will Odegaard go somewhere else? Like some of those critical, crucial players, if you win the big stuff, right? Because they've done it. I think now, actually, a lot of those players who might potentially have left this summer and gone on to like Reals and Barças and et cetera, probably going to stay because they've got that taste for challenging for title and want to win something with Arsenal. So overall, I would say actually not winning any silverware has probably served you better. Like, time will tell.
Yeah.
But like, honestly speaking, I'd love to banter Arsenal more. It was a really, really good season. They took all of us by surprise. I thought it was going to fall away quicker. It did fall away in the end.
Yeah.
I'm glad it did fall away. But like, it's not, you can't define Arsenal's season last season by the last few games bottling. Like, yes, there was a bottling, but you can't define the season as a bottle job, because you actually did well, and I'll give you guys some credit for that.
I mean, I agree with you. So on the kind of the 2 points, I think your first point around, the hunger, I agree with you 100%, and I've actually kind of made this point elsewhere, and people have disagreed with me on the podcast when I was talking about Man City, right? And everyone was saying, no, we don't want them to win anything, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, how do you really take down what they're trying to build in terms of like a dynasty, right? And you do that through not letting them win everything, but they win everything and then they come back next season and there's not as much hunger. And they're not changing up their whole squad. All of their players have won the bloody Premier League 5 times and now they won the Champions League and whatever else. Maybe there's a way that you break down that dynasty by just wanting it more than they do. And I think with Arsenal, I agree with you that a lot of those players are still very young as well. So they're not at their peak. They need to improve. And in this day and age, with the money that they're getting, that they're making, and the media scrutiny that they're under, and all that kind of stuff, it's very easy for them to be like, "Oh, I've won something now. Let's sit back." You know what I mean? And not every player does this, but there's a chance that can happen. Yeah. And particularly when you want these players to progress, there needs to be something to chase after. And I think had we won the Premier League, there would have been a large... people would have been looking like, what's next? How do we get better than this? And the only way that we do that is when we win the Champions League, right? I think we are much, 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 much further away from winning the Champions League than we are from winning the Premier League. Right, we got close-ish last season, right? I don't see us getting anywhere near that in the Champions League next season, unfortunately.
I think it's
And
harder to win the
that
league than the
level.
Champions League, though.
I think winning the Champions League is more about luck.
Exactly. That's why I think
That's why I say
easier
it's
to win
harder.
the Champions League.
Because you've got to go on a run, you know what I mean? And you've
But
things have got to align
competition-
in a certain way
Yeah.
to allow you
Cup-
to give more credence to that. Like if you're fighting for the Premier League and you're fighting for the Champions League, I think in most cases Premier League managers are going to go for the Premier League, right? Unless they're Pep and they've won it a bunch of times before.
Yeah.
So I think if Arteta had to make the choice between the two,
Prem.
I think he would probably choose the Prem, right? So in that case, that's why I'd say it'd be harder for us to get anywhere near the Champions League. So anyway, I agree with you 100% that maybe not winning something this season will help us kick on further and keep some of those players around. Like, obviously, I've just seen that Saliba's signed a new contract now, or at least it's like somewhat confirmed. I don't know. Like nowadays, if Fabrizio says it, does that mean that it's fully confirmed yet, or do I have to wait for it to come up on the bottom of the Sky Sports news screen? I'm not sure
Arsenal
anymore.
have confirmed it.
Okay.
Fabrizio does a job. He's the arbiter of all facts these days. Like, it's actually insane. Like, I've seen like United fans who are waiting for like the here we go on the takeover. I'm like, guys, this is a business deal. Like, it's business news. Like, Fabrizio Romano is not going to break a massive piece of business.
You're on the stock exchange and that. Yeah, honestly, this is going to be like some SEC stuff coming up.
Don't get me onto that one. But yeah.
We'll get into that later. But no, exactly. I agree though. I think. I mean, first of all, I want to mention Johnson's got some judge on this pod because every single United fan or someone that comes on, he ends up agreeing with them. Like all the rattling hype I'm trying to build up, and he just ends up agreeing with everything he's saying.
Well, no, I think if you're reasonable, I'm reasonable, right? And I appreciate if you came on the pod and you thought I was like one of the Twitter fingers Arsenal fans that was talking crap about us, like being so unbelievable, and it wasn't a bottle,
and we're going to sign Mbappe
else, and we're going to sign Mbappe. Like Don Robbie's, his eyes are closing up and his teeth are coming out. He's so happy about these rumors and that. If I was like that, then fair. Come on here and rattle me all you want, but I'm 100%. I think my feet are relatively close to the ground. I did forward the Mbappe rumor to Antony though.
He did. He was chatting as well. He definitely got his secret hype. He keeps it in the DMs. He never puts it out there properly.
Of course, but no. I can't expose myself out here.
Go back to the champs conversation. I agree though, pretty much with everything. But I think lessons have to be learnt from the teams that have won the champs though. In that, it's not only luck. There is an element of like developing a general kind of nous and tactical plan for how you approach those European games, because it took Fergie ages to win it, and we got close, and we had a great team for a big chunks of the teams that were slapping the Prem up and winning them, like, you know, continuously, and still not able to take that the next step further. Pep, who everyone's crowning now as the new saviour of football, above Fergie, above everyone, he's also taken ages. With all the financial might and all the players he's had, it's still taking him a bit of time. So I agree. I don't think Arsenal have got a chance in hell of going really, really deep in the Champions League or winning it. I think they might get to the quarters. They may sneak a semi, but I would be surprised if they do, because they haven't been in the Champions League for 6-7 years. And they've stunk up the Europa when they've been in it. No offense, Johns, but you have. So I don't know if you guys have the European nous right now. I think it's going to take Arteta a bit of time, and I think it only makes sense that you just go for the Prem. Don't even give a shit about the Champions League. Try and blood players in it. Try and get the hang of it. Make sure you don't drop out completely or go into Europa, because that will look terrible. But just try and get through and try and make a dent in it. But almost take it as a bit of a learning curve, and just go for that Prem hard, because I think what you've proven is you can go on runs. I remember hearing people talk about only City and Liverpool can go on runs. You went on runs this season, and it did falter at the end, but you went on, big spurts of really good results. So you've got the
we can go on both positive and negative runs though, as the back end of the season shows you. We have the positive potential to do either of those two things.
Even the back end run, it was a combination of some disappointing results where you drew, though. It wasn't like you just ended up losing 6 games. You drew a bunch, and City were faultless at the same time.
It's fine margins. It's the fine margins that we always talk about in football. I mean, look, those games, like, was it the Villa game where you were 2-0 down and Reece Nelson scored the last minute goal and stuff like that? Like, that you had those moments that you had towards the end of the season, early in the season. The difference was, you were winning them, right? You were getting those last minute winners or getting those last minute equalisers, and that actually just stopped happening because that luck does run out eventually. So,
but City were dropping points at the same time, so that it was a combo, and at the end it swapped the other way around where you were dropping little points here, but not. Like, I don't think there were too many catastrophic results at the end of the season.
There were some
disappointing draws.
It was the pendulum swing, though, right? It was like the whole way that we were leading it, everyone was still just like, nah, City they're never ever far behind, right? And we were always. I mean, I don't know what the odds were at the bookies, but I feel like in fans' eyes, we were, at least non-Arsenal fans or non-gassed up Arsenal fans, were all of the belief that there was still a chance, a very high chance, a very high chance that we weren't going to win anything, right? So as soon as the pendulum swung the other way, and now everyone was expecting us to win it, our asses fell out, and we didn't know how to handle it, and that's where the expectation thing. I agree with you, Dom, because if we had won it this season, what would the expectation be now? The expectation would be like, what? You've got to go on and win it again, or you've got to go and win the Champions League, or you've got to go and do something else. And I don't think we're anywhere near living up to those expectations. So that's why one of the main reasons I agree completely with what you're saying, that maybe it was better this season that it didn't fully work out. It gives us something to strive to. Our expectations haven't gone through the roof. And maybe that's how we'll get better slowly instead of going from 0 to 100.
Yeah, you got to be feeling positive. Like, I mean, one of my lasting memories actually was very, very early on in the season when I watched a couple of Arsenal games. I don't watch all of them, obviously, because I was going to do that to myself. But I was watching a couple of Arsenal games to really see what the hype and buzz was about, and I was so impressed. Like, I really was so impressed and surprised by the style of football they were playing, and they were dominating the ball very, very high up the pitch in a way that I've literally only seen Man City do. It wasn't about counter attacks. It wasn't about I was seeing 10 players inside the opposition's half, passing the ball around in a way that like a Pep side does, and I'm not really seeing that from other teams. And that's when I mention it, because that was the moment for me where I went, do you know what? This isn't just a team who are getting a few good results here or there, or have only played against easy teams so far. They've got a style of football where they're dominating possession high up the pitch, and for me, that is ultimately the sign of the clubs who are in the strongest position in the leagues, the ones who can get the ball really hard at the pitch and keep passing the ball around, be patient and create. And so and with the signings you've already made or set to announce, like there's a lot of positivity for Arsenal, but it can always come tumbling down at any single moment, and that, we know that, we hope for that.
Your fingers.
But let's see.
Let's chat about the transfers then, because you mentioned it, Dom. So we let slip, or announced earlier, that De Gea's released this statement saying he's gone. So you would imagine we're looking. I think all the hype's around Onana.
What's his name
for that? Andre Onana. I think.
What's his name?
Goalie. Andre Onana.
Onana.
What's his name?
Come on, bro. Come on, Ant.
I set you up three times.
Come on, man. I went wireless yesterday. My head's still all over the shop. But which I think will be a great signing. Like I think stylistically, like you mentioned earlier, that's exactly what Ten Hag wants. So I think that's great. I think we're probably getting slightly fleeced on the price, looking at what they're quoting. But
what's new?
55.
That's just generally,
Man United tax
settings. Exactly. We've also got Mason Mount, who was announced during the week, number 7. What do you think about that? That's a bit. Where was I, Johnson? I was with you, and I was just like, "What the hell? How the hell did he get the number 7 shirt?"
Yeah, surprised. I was surprised that they gave it to him, but not surprised from the point of view of some United fans. Like, this is an absolute disgrace, disrespect on the shirt. The number 7 shirt isn't the same as the captain's armband, where I've seen some people saying this on Twitter, like, you have to earn the 7 shirt. Cristiano Ronaldo joined us at 18 years old from Sporting Lisbon, having barely played, and got given the number 7 shirt. Eric Cantona had been at the club for about 3 months before he took the 7 shirt off Brian Robson. Like, it's the 7 shirt isn't about this is a reward for what you've done for the club. The number 7 shirt is to signify someone who's exciting, who's going to be a marquee kind of player in that George Best type ilk.
Yeah.
So my worry about it wasn't so much that it's it wasn't like when Maguire got the armband, which was a disgrace, and Ollie's the biggest mistake Ollie made at the club. But it did raise my eyebrows. It raised my eyebrows because clearly Alejandro Garnacho thought he was going to be the number 7. He changed his Instagram profile to Garnacho7. He had his birthday the other day, which, by the way, I don't know if you've seen the pictures from that birthday party. Very, very weird. He had 2 dwarfs, one dressed as Ronaldo, one dressed as Messi, bring in his cake. Very, very strange vibes from him, which I don't. No one loves to see that. He obviously thought
look at his Barnet.
Look at him, or Garnacho, as we call him. I think it was a bit of a strange one. However, having seen the way that Mount has conducted himself over the few days since he joined, the interviews that he's done, seeing him, it's obviously all club PR, but seeing him in training and whatnot, I'm with it. Honestly, I do think he's a good player. And there was a point at which, and I can see your face, Jonty, but I say this from a position of someone who didn't think that at a certain point. I was like, Mount isn't all that. Mount isn't all that. I saw him as this, Jack of the lad ilk type player. Harry Redknapp's probably his godfather. Jamie Redknapp's probably his sister. Frank Lampard's in a relationship with him. Do you know what I mean? That kind of English football world of Jack the lads. I saw him as all of that. But I don't think so. And there was a point a few years ago. I found the WhatsApp actually that I sent to one of my friends' WhatsApp groups where I said, I think I was wrong about Mount. This guy is actually very good. And having watched a lot more of him since the rumours came about and YouTube highlights, etc., I think he is a good player. I think he's the profile of player that United need. He's an upgrade on Christian Eriksen. He can play 90 minutes in the way Eriksen can't. He can play 50, 60 games a season if needed in a way that Eriksen can't. He can get back and defend, and he's good on the ball. I'm pleased with the signing. The number 7 thing, whatever. We've had some awful number 7s down the years from Michael Owen and others. So
but would he?
It is what it is.
Here's my thing, right? So we can go back on YouTube and check this out. When we first started talking about this rumor, right? We talked about it quite early, right? Before anything got confirmed or anywhere near confirmed. And the big question was, is he your number 1 target? Did you feel like you actually needed someone like him? Because all of the chat at the end of the season was, we need a striker. Weghorst can't hit a barnyard with a banjo.
It's not done yet, is it?
No, of course it's not done yet. But the fact that you went after him first, now obviously you're going to have to go after a goalkeeper. Maybe it is just a question of, as you say, right? They're going after him first because it's an easy target, and they'll still go and get a striker afterwards. But is he what you wanted? If you had your choice of transfers this season, was that position what you wanted to improve on? And would he have been your first choice to do that? Is my question.
Look, a couple of points here. Yes, I think we needed to improve that position, absolutely. And I think we saw that in a lot of the games towards the end of the season, that it was one area of the pitch we were really struggling in. In those big games, Christian Eriksen was a liability. When you're out of possession, Christian Eriksen couldn't do what Mason Mount will be able to do, which is to be able to track back and offer something and press and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we needed to improve that position. I probably wouldn't have said he's my number 1 target, but I don't really think about it in those terms. I'm not necessarily making a list in my head, like a kid at Christmas about who I want to see. I'm like, okay, does this make sense? It does make sense. Do I trust Ten Hag? We've just spent probably a good half an hour talking about Ten Hag. Do I trust that his judgment? Yes, I definitely do, and I know he clearly wanted to bring in Mason Mount into that position. I think the thing you have to remember is just because Mason Mount is the first signing we've made this summer doesn't mean to say that's the priority signing. We don't know behind the scenes what movements have been had, what conversations have been had. The priority signing this summer, I'd be very, very shocked if it wasn't Harry Kane. It's not going to happen, and I think Spurs have made that fundamentally clear. But I think for Manchester United as a club, for most of our fans, you'd say the number 1 signing we had to make was Harry Kane. Now De Gea's gone. Even before De Gea's gone, we need to sign a new keeper. Onana looks like that's going to be the one. So keeper, and actually, just quickly on this point, the Mount goalkeeper thing is a critical point, because in order to make Mason Mount as useful as he can be, you need a ball-playing goalkeeper. De Gea staying and having Mason Mount just wouldn't work. Like, it just absolutely wouldn't work. You need someone who's going to be able to find him with those passes on the back, but can also squeeze the space in our third of the pitch. And so I think that's a huge part of that decision as well. So look, if we only sign Mason Mount this summer, yes, I'll be like, that's not good enough. Like, that's poor. Of course, we need to get a striker, but I do really think he's going to be a very good signing for us, and I'm excited for him. And he just seems like a good lad, you know. And you want a good lad, don't you?
This is what I'm not prepared to deal with. So Ant knows I've not hated him. I've thought he was mad overrated for the longest time ever, and it's partly what you were talking about before, right? It's that whole English boy, Jack the lad kind of, yeah, he's great. He's the next great hope for English football and all of that kind of stuff. And the fact that he came through Chelsea's academy, and the fact that Chelsea fans generally are so unbearable, you know, they made me hate him. To the point where probably I hated him more than I should have, because at the end of the day, he seems like a half decent guy. He's not doing crazy things out here, like get endorsed to bring him his birthday cake and that. So that's fair. I don't know if he will live up to the potential that was set for him in that kind of English thing, but I don't necessarily think he has to live up to that potential to be good for you. Right? Ants has got a picture of a player on his wall who, you know, wasn't lighting up the world and getting Ballon d'Or shouts, but was certainly an extremely important player for you. I guess my question is, what are your expectations around him? Because giving him the number 7 shirt, I think you're right, right? It shouldn't be a reward. I think in a lot of cases, it's a precursor to what we expect from you, right? We give you the number 7 shirt. It's not because you've already done it. It's because we think you're going to do it. And that's maybe why they were thinking about giving Garnacho the number 7 shirt, because he's been looking real tasty.
I would answer that quickly. That question is quite simple. The answer is the person we have on the wall. I think if he comes off and has the impact that, for example, Park Ji-sung had, or even like a Darren Fletcher had for a big chunk of the time where he was playing for United, I think he will have achieved the goal for him. I don't think the goal is for him to come and, you know, start getting 15, 20 goals and assists regularly every season and contributing mad numbers like we've seen Bruno, for example, do before, or someone like that. I think the role is for him to, we'll not get into that. The role I think for him is to try and, shocking. The role is for him to actually to carry out tasks and tactical strategies that Ten Hag has of that left-sided 8. And I think Christian Eriksen has the ball. We talked about it last week. Christian Eriksen has the ball-playing ability to do those things and carry out those tasks. He lacks everything else. He lacks the physicality, and he lacks, I think, some of the mentality needed, the determination needed to go and carry out some of those tasks. And I think that's why Mount's been brought in. And I'll just circle it back to, I think probably De Jong was the top target, but he's not possible. He doesn't want to come. No. So who are you going to try and find who fits a similar mold? Who can we get? And I think they've landed on Mount, which I think they landed on Mount during last season already. They realised De Jong's not possible. 100%. Mount is possible, because there were talks of him already trying to leave, Liverpool trying to sneak in the dirty Scousers to try and get him, and other people like that. And we went in and we decided, let's do it, because he's the closest thing we can get to that type of profile. He's gettable, and apparently he wants to come. So, and then again, I agree. I don't think the priority was Mount. It's just the first one they've able to get done. They wanted Kane, they can't get Kane. So they've realised if we are going to be able to get Kane, it's going to drag on, and Levy's going to rinse us at the back end of August, and that's the only way we're going to get him. So they've decided, let's get the ones that we can get in through. Mount will get into the system. We have a big impact. De Gea's happened. We'll get Onana, what's his name? And I think that will have a big impact.
I'm totally cool with that. The reason why, I thought he was overrated is because Chelsea were putting that whole Lampard weight on him, right? They were like, this guy's going to be the next like that. As long as you guys are not doing that kind of stuff, then I think, it's a, I'm not going to call it a shrewd signing like some YouTubers might, but we've got
Bruno. We've got Bruno. We'll not get into that. We've got Bruno. Bruno's our player that we've got that hype on, and we'll keep it pushing.
And I think one of the points here, and again, it comes back to Ten Hag and what Ten Hag's looking for in his players. Like, it's a piece of the puzzle, right? And I think the way that he looks is he looks collectively at the team, like, what's the needs? Like, what piece unlocks the potential of another piece? Can Mason Mount, that left-sided midfielder, can that unlock something in Sancho that we haven't seen? so far. Like that's the mentality that Ten Hag is looking at, and he's obviously assessed his squad, see which pieces of the puzzle are missing, rather than go, okay, we need the biggest name possible at the highest price possible to fit into this setup. So I think it's a really good signing. I'm excited for it. I already love the boy. Let's see what it
gets those homegrown numbers up as well, which I think is an important one that we forget.
Yeah, yeah.
Football Manager will teach.
Think
you
about it. We're going to be selling. We're going to be selling quite a lot of players, and I think a big chunk of them are going to be the homegrown players. And I think that's not only because they want to leave and they're surplus to requirements, but it's also so we can sort out the FFP problems we've got, so we can free more money up to do other signings. So I think all of it does make sense. But yeah. Anyway, let's quickly move on to the Arsenal. Let's get your opinion on the Arsenal signings. They've got Havertz through the door, donkey lover. Let's not chat about him too much.
Come on.
You've got Rice on the cusp, which I think is a massive signing. I think. My opinion is that's a game changer, and they've got Jurriën Timber, which might be low key, a little sneaky, really positive signing as well. So, what's your brief take on those signings?
Good signings. I think it's difficult to say they're not. I mean, look, Havertz. All right, he had a bit of a tricky up and down time at Chelsea. Is he necessarily the profile of what Arsenal need? I don't know. Maybe you needed more of an out and out goal scorer. That's certainly what it's looked like over the last season or so. But decent enough player. Declan Rice, obviously, huge talent, huge amount of potential. Also seems like. Hang on a minute. I'm going to ask you this, Jonty. So if your problem with Mason Mount is that he's part of the Harry Redknapp, Frank Lampard, white English football cabal, where does Declan Rice fit into that?
Oh, he's in there. He's 100% in there. No, 100% in there. I think I think maybe the difference is that, like, in my mind, Declan Rice coming from West Ham, obviously, there's a different level of attention you get. Right? Of course, he's still English and he's still, in the England team again, like you say, kind of the next great white hope kind of thing. I get that completely. The fact that he played for West Ham has kind of maybe toned that down a little bit. I think now that he's coming to Arsenal with a 105 million price tag, just coming off the back of winning a European trophy, people are going to start putting that back on him. The only thing I think maybe is that, maybe I'm talking about my here, but Arsenal to me has never really felt like that super English club. Right, it's not like the Liverpools or the Chelseas or those kinds of teams where they're very English, oi oi kind of types of teams. So when English players come to our club, they don't necessarily get all of that attention that they might in other clubs, like other big clubs, whether it's Man United or Liverpool or Chelsea. So I might be talking on my ass there, but I don't think he'll get Arsenal, as much like scrutiny as maybe a Mount might. But obviously the price tag is always the one that's going to be the talking point is, you spent 105 million on him. He's got to be the next best thing, like Antony says with Grealish.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money. And I mean, I do slightly take issue with Arsenal being characterised as this like multicultural socialist utopia land.
We're a French club, mate. What are you talking about? We're historically French.
Yeah. How's France doing these days?
World Cup final, mate. World Cup final.
I meant as a country.
Oh yeah, fair.
Look, but obviously Rice is a really good player. Is it going to work? Like, only time will tell. I'd actually like to know, like, from your point of view as an Arsenal fan, like what positions do you feel like need to be filled that perhaps you haven't been linked with players on? I mean, I
guess
the big
one was striker.
Maybe. Yeah, is there an issue around right back? I mean,
so
where does Timber fit into that?
It's a good point. I think actually my main issue in the defense is left back. I feel like Ben White, maybe he doesn't actually want to play that. I don't know, but he seems pretty happy with what he's done so far. The fact that we're buying Timber would suggest to me that he's going to be very fluid with the back line and kind of just be able to put anyone anywhere. But I'm still really worried about the left back position because Tierney, all of this stuff around Tierney leaving, now it looks like he's not going to leave. The Zinchenko thing, I'm still worried in that position because Tierney doesn't stay fit. Zinchenko cries on a pitch all the time and can't necessarily defend very well. Apparently, he's as bad a defender as Trent Alexander-Arnold. So that's where I'd be more worried. So I'd say left back and striker would be now what I'm looking at, my two priorities. And I hate to say striker because I really like Gabby Jesus. He just doesn't score enough.
So why did you sign Havertz?
I really don't know, and I'm not even going to put my hands up and be like, "That's a great signing." I said to Anthony before, like, "What the hell are we doing? Buying Kai Havertz for 65?
It's been revealed.
Was it 65
No,
million?
but it's been revealed that he's going to play as a left-sided 8. He's the Xhaka replacement. That's what everyone's been saying.
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily make sense to us right now, but I'll tell you what, having seen him play up front and in attacking thirds, I'm happy to put him somewhere else.
Because he's been put him anywhere. Joe Linton settings.
He's exactly. Moussa Dembele, Joe Linton. He might turn into an amazing player a bit deeper, and I think it's possible. But I think the striker one's interesting. I think I would be looking at Balogun and keeping him because there's a lot of hype about trying to sell him. But I think you've got to give him a shout because it might be harsh and it might actually be something where you need your management team to take a bit of a leap of faith and maybe sell Nketiah or something to give Balogun some space.
I would do contract, though.
The other option you could always go with is take Mason Greenwood off us, since you've also got that profile of player with Thomas Partey.
Don't you dare. Mate, Partey's gone as well. Chargy will be gone soon too, so don't worry about that, mate. You can rely on Jose Mourinho to take Greenwood.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry about
no scruples.
There you go. But I think striker. I'd like to see Balogun get a chance. Do I realistically think he will? No, because and again, I might be talking here again, but there was a while back do you remember when Costa Rica did quite well and Joel Campbell did quite well? I think it was in a World Cup, right? And he came back to Arsenal. Everyone was like, "Yeah, give him a chance." You know, what else do we have? Let's see him play. And obviously, it was a different manager. He never got on the pitch. He never touched ball, and that was that. So, the fact that Balogun did well last season, do I think it's enough for Arteta to give him a chance? I don't know if it will be, especially if we've just given Nketiah a new contract. I don't know how that's going to work. It's just there's just not enough goals up there. I need more goals from someone up top.
But that's one way to look at it. But look at it from the Saliba angle. Saliba went out on loan, did really, really well. A lot of people thought he wasn't going to come back and do it because he was whinging about it not playing and there was all that stuff about there was beef or whatever. I've heard the identical stuff about Balogun. He wants to play, he's not happy, he doesn't really like things with Arteta, but he performed when he was in France, so let him come back and have a chance. Like, I don't hate Nketiah, I think he's decent. I think people, the chant and the song and stuff makes it sound like he's some sort of lethal player, which he's not. But I think he's decent, but I do think you can improve, and I think you've got someone in there already who could be that player. So just give him a go. And I know Jesus doesn't score, but he facilitates the other players, so it's not like having him there is absolutely, horse.
No, yeah, he certainly makes our wingers score more. Right? I don't know. Without him, I don't know if Saka and Martinelli would have got as many goal contributions as they did. They would have still been very good, but I don't know if they would because of the fact that he's just a constant nuisance to the centre-backs. He kind of wanders around a little bit, free roam, to the point where he gives or makes space for Martinelli and for Saka to get in and around him. There's something about Arsenal's football that maybe lacks versatility to me a little bit. I would love to be able to see us play in a few different ways if our number one isn't really working out too well. Because when we come up against City, no offence, but I don't think we're going to beat them at their own game. We might every now and then, but I don't know if that's a proven strategy. Whereas you guys who have done relatively well against City previously have figured out a way that you can kind of counteract the way that they play.
As have Spurs,
exactly. He can't even get a goal against them lot. So I would like to see maybe a more physical striker option to play up there. No, thank you.
Please do that because I think we've got a sell percentage. Please do that. Buy him for about 50 million. That will help us out massively. But no, I agree with you, man. I think we can wrap up the transfer part a little bit now and go talk about the Saudi and Qatar stuff in a bit. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you will need to develop another way of playing to win the league. I think City last season proved that. Like they've been playing one way forever. And they decided, you know what, this hasn't been working this season so far. with Haaland up front. We're going to have to play around with it and try a few different styles. And I think it kind of started around the time they went to the Emirates and played a little bit more deep. They played deeper, and they didn't play the normal way City do. And they ended up like smash and grabbing you that day, and then kind of ended up developing this new style that they ended up using to win the treble. But yeah, you'll need to win it, I think. But yeah, let's move on and let's talk about a subject that we haven't really talked about much on the pod, up until now. And Dom kind of alluded to it earlier. United are, in air quotes, going through a takeover, maybe. And one of the the two takeover options that have been kind of running in the press for the last, I don't know, it feels like forever, but it's probably been like 3 or 4 months, has been Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos, the local lad, putting the Manchester back into Manchester United and all that Brexit, or the Qatar. I think he's I think he's involved in the royal family in Qatar or whatever, but he's not the same as apparently the PSG owners who are involved in that side of things. There's been rumours pretty much every week saying one side's going to win, the other side's going to win. It's been going back and forth forever. There's a very clear media bias, I think, towards Jim Ratcliffe from our beautiful local press,
British media,
British media, and quite a lot of kind of. We'll get into what it is, but there's been a lot of skepticism around Qatar buying, the biggest club in the UK and what it would do to the beautiful game and all of that. Dom, what's your opinion? Because I'll be honest, I've found it really difficult to kind of digest a lot of the chat around it, because one offer is clearly better than the other. One offer will clearly help the club a lot more than the other. But it seems to be that offer is the one that everyone wants us to hate, because it's coming from, let's call a spade, brown people from the Middle East. So what's your take?
I mean, look, there's so many different strands and facets to this conversation, and it's very, very hard to actually develop a line and a position on it where you can feel confident that you are taking the position which is the best one ethically, morally for your club, but also the one where the club is going to succeed the most. It's a very, very difficult debate to navigate your way through. So I think that's kind of the starting point. I mean, where we're looking at now, I mean, I'm not excited by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend that this is something that excites me. I don't particularly like the guy. I don't know if he's done a brilliant job at Nice. And of course, he has far less wealth than Qatar have, and is going to keep the Glazers in. That's his proposal. His proposal is to take 51% of the club, to keep the Glazers in. One of the arguments is that he'll be able to get rid of them eventually, or in the next 2, 3 years, or whatever, and then everything will be fine again. On the other hand, Qatar, a country which let's be honest, does have a poor human rights record in many ways. There's just so many aspects to this that just make it so hard to have a really difficult, to have a very clear position on. Where I stand, honestly speaking, okay, I'll tell you where I stood. I stood 3-4 weeks ago when I watched Manchester City lift the Champions League title and to win the treble, and I said, whatever it takes for us to compete back again on this level, I couldn't care less. Let's just do it. I need United to be back at that place. I was willing to go there. I probably still am willing to go there. So I think ultimately I would like to see big state funds pumped into our club. And I recognise that that poses so many moral questions. I think, look, ultimately this is where ultimately it comes down to this. If you want to support a Manchester United that is free from any moral or political questions or problems around it, then go support FC United, right? Go do that. And some people have done that. And sorry for anyone who doesn't know, FC United was the Manchester United offshoot that started when the Glazers bought the club. And some people have done that, and I respect them for it. I couldn't personally do it. There's a guy I know who's a very high-profile lawyer who worked on the Hillsborough case actually, and he used to be a Manchester United fan and changed to FC United within one day. And I said to him, "Do you miss Manchester United?" He was like, "Nah, I don't miss it at all. The club died the day the Glazers came in." So there are no good solutions to this kind of thing. So you have to change like how you perceive success and what it is that you want out of the situation. At this point, I want Manchester United to dominate world football again. Probably the most easiest and direct route to that is to have a lot of transfer funds. But also, that's not just what Qatar are offering. Qatar are also offering investment in the local area, investment in the training ground, investment in the women's team, and have been very clear on all of that. And sure, like there's a whole element of PR to it, calling themselves the 92 Foundation. Of course that there's a PR involved there. But I think it might be the only option. And just to very quickly come back on the question of race, which is part of this, there is always a very specific rejection of certain types of owners of football clubs that seem to be specifically held back for people of colour, particularly from the Middle East. We saw it around the Qatar World Cup. All these debates happened. And it's not to say that there are not deep problems in some of these countries. And, I'm never going to be the first one to back like dictatorships, particularly dictatorships based off oil money, particularly in those countries where people are fighting back and are resisting and trying to get recognition for rights and against torture, and hundreds of people languish in prisons. Like, all of this is absolutely fundamentally true, in as much as it's also true in lots of other places around the world. But there are also lots of football fans in those countries as well, and a lot of people who are very, very interested in the game. And if the game wants to be a global thing, it has to recognise that is what it is. So, look, as you can tell from what I'm saying and how I'm talking, there is no easy answer to this. But I think that's probably overall where I stand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's just choosing between two evils, really. If you want to look at the human rights issues and the sports washing issues and the greenwashing issues and all that kind of stuff, like none of the options available are 100% pure and clean. Like the options, I'm sure if we look at, obviously we hate the Glazers right now, and that they don't necessarily have a record of human rights issues in America or something like that. They just are just terrible blood-sucking leeches who have just used our club in the worst way. So there are all kinds of different versions of evil, but like you said, it seems to be for us in the UK. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago with the Saudi transfers. There's a specific type of profile
racism.
of people,
Yeah.
Exactly, that come into football who are allowed in certain areas but not allowed in certain other areas. So if you would like to be a great footballer and come and perform for us and entertain us, we'll pay you very well. Come on down. That's why we see all the amazing Black, African, Caribbean football players that are in our game, but very few coaches, owners, directors of football and anything upwards. And it's just another case of the same thing. Let's be honest. It's just another offshoot of the same branch of the same football problem when it comes around race and kind of trying to block out certain types of people. And we don't hold our own or Western counterparts to the same kind of I think standards, which I think is not fair at all. And I think putting people in a position where we're going to hound them and make them feel terrible for supporting the Qatar bid, and instead tell them to support the Jim Ratcliffe bid, where we just talked about, he's got Ineos are notorious for greenwashing and for doing other things. They're not clean in this either. So I don't know how I could feel comfortable supporting them if I hold myself to the same moral standards that you want me to hold against Qatar. So that's why it's just if we think about what choices we have available anymore. The 50+1 German style, Johnson's wearing his Union Berlin top, doesn't exist in the UK. If it did, I would prefer that. And I would support that if that was an option. But we don't have that option. And corporate capitalism has come into the Premier League as soon as it was started, basically. It was started for that pure reason. So now these are the cards that we're dealt. And we just got to make the best one that we can live with, I think, from the options we have available. But I don't know, Johns, what do you think, man?
we've got to take into account the fact that this is going to sound strange to begin with, but countries are in very different levels of development, right, across the world, both in terms of like economically speaking, but also in terms of like how developed they are towards the game of football. And I think it's rich coming from a very Eurocentric sport, right? It's a very, very Eurocentric sport, like the big five leagues, UEFA, all of this stuff, right? The game is really built around Europe essentially, right? When it comes to like the club level games, right? Obviously World Cup, it gets bigger than that, and Brazil and Argentina, there are obviously leagues outside of Europe that do well too, but for the most part it's a very Eurocentric game. And I think when we think about that, a lot of the clubs that exist today, a lot of the foundation that we've got today that allows the game to be so big in these markets comes off the back of very similar things that we're accusing Qatar of, right? It's just 100 years before or 50 years before, or even up until this day. So it seems to me a bit rich to try to judge, a country like Qatar or previously China or wherever it is, Saudi Arabia, for investing into the game of football and holding them to the standards that we expect from highly developed nations that have been doing this for a very long time and have mostly grown off the back of not very nice things, and holding countries like Qatar, who are, while they have a lot of money, still in terms of like GDP per capita and so on and so forth, are not as developed as the countries that we're talking about, right? Same thing for China. So we're holding them to all of these standards, same way that we did it for the World Cup. And at the end of the day, that what we're essentially saying is, until you guys get big enough and rich enough as a country to now kind of develop in that kind of socialist way to take better care of the middle classes and the working classes and so on, you're not allowed to be involved in the sport, essentially, is what we're saying. So Qatar, China, come back to us in 30 years when you guys have cleaned up all of your human rights records. And until then, you guys can't play football, or we're not going to help you play football. And I think that is, in my opinion, that's wrong. And it is, as Dom said, it's a really difficult argument to get into because, again, we've got many parts of the world in very different stages of development, both ethically, but also financially. So it's really difficult as someone sat here in the UK to say, yeah, it's fine, just let Qatar come in and own this, or let Saudi Arabia own this, or whatever else, because of we don't want to ignore the human rights abuses. But it does feel very rich, at least, when we've got all of these players coming in who have made so much money off the back of the game, trying to squash Qatar or trying to squash Saudi Arabian clubs where those players aren't making anything. Like, there's a lot of players already in the Saudi Arabian league today that are not making anything. The fact that Ronaldo's going over to that league, Ruben Neves, whoever it is going over to that league, is going to get more money into the sport. It's going to get them better paid. It's, there's a lot of development that comes with allowing that to happen, or, just letting that happen as it should. So that's where it's a little bit rich to me. And again, for the whole Man United argument, you're not the first ones to have done it. Abramovich bought Chelsea.
Well,
right?
Exactly.
PSG, Man City, all of this stuff has been happening. So it seems a bit rich now that we're like, oh, wait, hold on a minute. Man United fans that support this, you guys are all scummy because you want Qatar to come in and rule everything. When, the game of football is being dominated right now. We've got a team that just won the treble that's got 115 charges on them. Right? We've got Newcastle that got Noon all over their shirts, and there's similar charges probably coming in their future too. So it seems a bit rich now to say, oh, Man United fans, you guys only need to be taking this into account more than anyone else did in the past. You know what I mean?
But look, 100%. But look, I agree with you. And of course, it's riddled with hypocrisy, and it always is. Like, it always is. That's not to say you can actually, there are very good specific examples of boycotting particular countries or whatever that can actually have impact and can actually support people in those countries who are calling for those kind of boycotts, who don't want a normalized international relationship. There's also the geopolitical question that sits in a lot of this. We talk about Saudi and Qatar. Saudi and Qatar are literally pretty much in a Cold War, right? They're both competing with one another to be the most powerful players in the world, and especially in the Arab world. And this is very much part of that. The ownership of football clubs is part of that. It's an extremely complicated one to fully unravel. And there are so many positions that people take which are for for very different reasons, whether it be a racist reason or a very principled, ethical reason. But I think ultimately, like, to quote many other people, the game's gone. Yeah, like it's done, right? It's done. If you had any illusions that football was going to be some kind of progressive socialist utopian paradise, like
sport,
you're living in a different planet. Like, the game has gone, and you either back your team, or you don't, or you get involved and you do something else. But where I stand right now, I love my club. I love the badge. Like, I want to go to games. I want to support their team. I want to get behind them, and I want to see them win. And that's really like the reality of it. And I know that, like, this is what we were talking about the other day, Antony, that, like, where does your ethical position start and stop when it comes to sport? How do you want to allow your enjoyment of the game to be, I guess, ruined or taken away by certain ethical decisions? I don't know. Like, you have to judge it case by case. Mason Greenwood, I'm not going to back him. Most Man United fans have not backed him, and I think that's brilliant. But let's be honest, he's a guy who was looking like, he was the star boy, right? He was United's star boy. He looked like the future of the club. He looked like the future probably of English football, right? So it would have been very easy for United fans to turn around and go, like, no, let's wait and see, like, maybe she was lying, maybe this. I don't think United have done that generally, and United have taken a pretty good position. Who knows, we might see him back. But I think in that instance, you can quite clearly say, principally, I'm going to take the right principled position. And I think that you can do that in those cases. But when it comes to the overall ownership of football and the structures of it, like, my God, impossible. It's just impossible to even start to be in that debate.
Yeah. It's too deep. Like, the issues are too deeply rooted in.
Very nuanced
we're never going to be able to open up that can of worms. Like, we were just going to be able to peel back layers that we're being allowed to see.
It's a global financial system.
Exactly. Like,
let's not forget, like, FIFA and UEFA officials have been getting paid off for a long time now.
Exactly.
So this sport, at the very top is rotten as well.
This is the thing. If you want to take that moral stance, I appreciate and respect and have no bad feelings towards anyone. I quite admire people that are willing to take that. It's a very drastic step. Mm-hmm. But then it becomes really hard to then do that. Like, you'll kind of feel impelled to do that across the board. And then you're basically going to have to live out in the sticks.
Literally.
And, like, live off your own land and not interact with any company in the world. Because nearly all of them have got some shady stuff in them.
Yes.
So this is the thing. So we in this country, and most people that live in, like, modern society are not willing or not able or don't feel comfortable taking that drastic a step. So we live in the grey areas where we make decisions based on how we kind of feel in those moments, or what particular moral values we hold kind of, closer to us. Mm. And I think that the Greenwood one is a good example, because I think a lot of people do hold that very, very close to them, because a lot of people have encountered that stuff or have seen that stuff, or we know what it looks like and what it is. Whereas with companies, we're not able to get to that level. We either don't have the knowledge or we're not given the access. The one thing I think that's really hard is people who kind of sit in their ivory towers and kind of pretend like they hold that kind of pure moral stance. Your Jamie Carragher's, who's out there spitting on children, but then saying that, this is terrible, and calling Rio a sellout and all these people are sellouts because they kind of sit in the spaces we're talking about, where they're making decisions based on individual kind of case-by-case scenarios. So that's the part that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think a lot of our media, our kind of traditional media, sit in those spaces. And that's where it becomes really unbearable to kind of listen and see that.
And they might, and people like Jamie Carragher and people who like, again, we go back to like the redknapp cabal. We're just making up this thing that like maybe doesn't really exist, but like whatever. But like, I think you all know what I mean. Yeah. They may use the language of morality and principled positions in making their case on some of this stuff. But let's be absolutely honest with ourselves. They fear losing control that they have had for so many years. Like that is why they take the position that they do. This is why they say the things they do, because they are under no illusions that they cannot compete financially with that money that is coming from elsewhere. And they're scared of it, and they feel that is going to be the end of their time for being able to walk into jobs at Sky Sports as pundits, or to be able to walk into jobs in dressing rooms as managers or as coaches or as scouts or whatever. Like they know that this is that when this happens, and when this happens truly, that's the death knell for their control over football. And so however they may try to paint it up as a moral position, it's purely about selfish self-interests. And I will never back that. I will never get behind that.
No, you're 100% right, man. Screw them. And we'll just talk about football, and we can replace them and hold some more moral value than those words. But anyway, exactly. Bring us on Sky. Come on. I know a few people. Maybe we can hook it up in the future. But yeah, no, that's a great chat, man. Because we've been kind of talking about it. Johnson and I've been talking about bringing up the issue and talking about it, but it didn't feel right to do it without having someone like yourself on who can probably flesh it out and not just give like a half-ass chat, because as you see a lot of it where people kind of understandably have got a lot of self-interest and don't really want to talk about it because they feel like it could hurt their their subscriber base,
or they're just spouting the views of those who do.
Exactly.
They're just regurgitating and Jamie Redknapp speak.
Exactly, and that's not what we want to do, man, because that's just not the case. Like, we've seen it with China before as well, and we see it with lots of other countries, and it's just such an endless cycle that I think you've got to have a proper, honest chat and just say it how it is. But Dom, since you're one of our latest esteemed guests, we have a very special question that we ask all of our guests when they come on the show. Okay. And because you're on and you're one of our Asian brothers, but not necessarily from East Asia, we'll reframe the question slightly for you. Who is your all-time favourite Asian footballer? And feel free to go East Asian if you want, no pressure. But if you don't, who is that person?
That's a tricky one.
Don't you dare say Zidane Iqbal.
I'm not going to say Zidane Iqbal. Look, the temptation is to go Park, of course. As a Man United fan, things that he did, the importance that he gave to Man United at that time, and the way that he worked with Sir Alex, it's tempting. I have to go with an Iranian. Like, there's no doubt about it. And so when I think about Iranian players, obviously the obvious one is Ali Daei, who up until very recently was the highest international goal scorer of all time until a certain Portuguese player overtook him. But I'm not going to go with Ali Daei because at the time he wasn't my favourite player. He was kind of quite a tall, lanky striker, scored a lot of goals with his head. That wasn't my profile of player. Instead, the player that I loved in that Iran squad, and we're talking about the 1998 World Cup here, was a guy called Mehdi Madavikia, who you may remember or you may have heard of, you may not have done. I think he played for Hamburg for a bit. Like a lot of the best Iranian players, he did make his way over to Germany. And my lasting memory of him was 1998 World Cup, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Iran versus USA in the group stage. It was all kinds of political tensions around the game, and Iran actually won that game 2-1, and Madavikia scored the second goal, putting it over, I think, Casey Keller. And I was watching it at the time with a load of maybe about 30 or 40 local Iranians who just packed into this little bar to watch it. And the absolute scenes, people like throwing tables and chairs in the air. I mean, it was actually a bit of a disgrace, like, I can't lie. And it didn't reflect very well on our people whatsoever, but it is what it is. But for me, Mehdi Madavikia, he was quick, low centre of gravity. He always looked like he may have had a few too many kebab and rices before the game, but you got to love it. He gets my vote, but Park Ji-sung obviously very, very close second. I mean, shout outs to what was his name? The Celtic Nakamura.
Oh, Nakamura.
Yeah,
he always gets a mention on this section. Don't worry.
The free kick he scored against us.
Forget Don.
No. Baller. Baller. There's been some good players on this. In fact, Manchester United look like they might be set to sign a backup goalkeeper from Japan.
I saw that. Yeah. I saw that. He's a Blasian Japanese Don.
Yeah.
Which I thought that would be sick for us to transform our goalkeeping.
Zion Suzuki.
Yeah, Suzuki. Yeah,
Zion Suzuki.
Yeah.
What a name.
What a guy. What a guy. From Japan.
Straight
directly.
From the Japanese, the J1 league out here. Wow.
Yeah, apparently we've been scouting him for like years and years since he was really,
Since
you know, in the
14.
under 12s or something,
From
something crazy
14,
like that. Yeah,
goodness.
so I couldn't be happier for us to get another Asian in the team. If he's Blasian, that's even better. Come on,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And our goalkeeping department will be all people of colour, from bloody De Gea, Heaton, and Dean Henderson and the Brexit Club,
Yeah.
or you know, to that would be such a transformation. I love that. But now, man, that's a sick choice. You have to go. I think Iranian football, for a country that's gone through so much, to get to the amount of World Cups and produce the number of players. Obviously, Ali Daei is, like you said, you know, top scorer globally, internationally for such a long time. That's such a feat, man. And I think I enjoyed it. You know, around being in the World Cup, the recent World Cup. I think they did a decent job.
England gave us
I
poor.
mean, obviously,
It hurt.
yeah.
It hurt.
Yeah,
It really
the England
hurt.
one was rough. I know you must have been torn about that, but still to get there, and I don't think there was any shame in the way that it went. And I think it was good. I enjoyed seeing the Asian countries first of all get there and not get slapped silly by everyone, which I think was a really good thing. And yeah,
And it was
hopefully we can
funny. I
see
feel
more
like
of it.
it was funny because I feel like there was a lot of commentary after the first round of the group stage, where Qatar obviously got slapped, Iran got slapped. Like there was some really bad results, and there was like a little bit of commentary that was like Asian football just not up to it, just can't handle it, can't compete. And then after that, then went and kicked on, and you know we saw you know some really good runs and really good results all across the board. So I'm glad to see that, and I hope that can keep going forward, really. And it's, I don't know, like this again, it goes back to the discussion we were just having about who owns football, you know, and who has the most power and who has the most sway. Like it's inconceivable, really and truly, it's inconceivable an African nation hasn't won the World Cup, right? Like when you think about how it should be, like that tells you how unequal. Football currently is. And so, are we going to see that change anytime soon? Can we see the rise up of Asian footballing nations? Like, I hope so. I really hope we can see that rather than one or two standout players here and there. We need to move beyond that. But I don't know. Until the money is distributed better, it just ain't going to happen.
Yeah. No, you're right, man. And I think to end on something that Jonts will love, his legendary manager, not so our levels, but still, you know, up there. Arsene Wenger did mention that. And I think that's one thing I do rate Arsene Wenger a lot about, mentioning how, you know, the infrastructure is not fair, and the amount of great players that have come out of Africa in particular, but also Asia as well, but have not kind of translated into the success of those continental games is a travesty. And I hope it does change, man. It'll make me nothing. I would be African vicariously through them if they won. An African country won the World Cup, and equally if any Asian nation won the World Cup or just did really well and produced a batch of players and had a great league, it would be amazing. And I think it's we need to see it.
It's understated how important it is to see. Again, it comes down to representation, right? It's important to see those nations compete. You know, regardless of whether they're getting battered or not, it's important for them to get there. And that's what I really loved about that. Is I want to see teams that I haven't seen before or haven't seen frequently get into the world stage, because it bigs up your country. Maybe people are disappointed with the results, sure. Again, like we all say, it's not really a level playing ground at the moment for us to really expect those kinds of teams to compete with the likes of England and Spain and Brazil and whoever else that have invested quite a lot into the game. So I think that's my main takeaway, is that I want to keep seeing teams get into the World Cup, because again, that the influence that can have on the kids growing up in the country to go and play that sport, to be interested in that sport, and that's the only way that essentially those countries are going to grow in terms of football, right? Is more interest in the game, and as a result, obviously more money spent, and then maybe people will start allowing it a bit more in this kind of ethical manner. And so, yeah, I love that shout. I would love to continue to see Iran, Saudi Arabia, any African nation I can think of, China, whoever, to get more involved in it, or not get more involved, but to continue to play on those stages and really show that they can compete and that they're around for good. You know, their interest is solidified in the game.
100%, man. After all, it's like the global majority, right? We want to see everyone from that take part and do well. But what a great podcast, man. Absolutely smashed it. Of course, I said before the pod, let's try and keep it an hour long. No chance. But it was a great conversation. And yeah, thanks for coming on, Dom. It was sick to have you on. We'll have to get you on again later on.
Anytime.
But
Anytime.
Yeah, thanks, man. Absolute legend. Bit of a shame about the non-rattling, but you know what? Good.
I mean,
football chat.
Let's see. Next time you get me on, it might be after 6 losses in a row for Arsenal.
How about we
Arteta's
make a
been
bet?
Sacked. Like I'm not betting while this is being recorded. Hell no.
Let's not make a bet. Let's all make a prediction so we can come back and rattle each other in the future. Who do we think is going to finish higher next season?
I want to back United on this one, but if I'm very honest with myself, where things currently stand, how things currently look like, I think it'd be stupid to bet against Arsenal in that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think at the time of this recording, in the early parts of July, with just Mount in and rumours of Onana, and you having
what's his name,
Donkey Man, Timber on the way, and Rice basically through the door, and then rumours of, I know you're dreaming about Chouameni and other people, but potential for another sign-in. I think it's obvious that like we can't be delusional and say United. It would just be me puffing my chest out and being a little bit home team by saying that. But
especially when we've got Mbappe, Chouameni, and Valverde in our team, no questions.
But I tell you what, I tell you what, I'll do my Kevin Keegan rant. I'd love it if we finished above you, and I think it's not absolutely out of question.
No way.
I don't think it would be mental if we did. I think it's possible completely.
History tells us that it's never out of the question.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, let's wrap up the pod. For people listening on audio platforms, please try and follow it. Obviously, follow the social media derby. If you can, leave a review. That'd be super helpful. It'll help with all the algorithms and all that rubbish. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, share, subscribe. We're trying to grow as much as we can organically before we start putting the dollars in. But yeah, it would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, thanks guys, and see you guys next week.
Cheers, Dom.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Thanks.